On different sides of time. Caitlin was 14 years old when she first saw Tyler. Tall, self-confident and always smiling, he was the captain of the school football team, and the whole stadium chanted his name. For Caitlin, football was not just a sport, but a real passion. She didn't miss a single match, standing in the front row and supporting her favorite team. Tyler was 18 at the time. In addition to football talent, he had a special charisma, thanks to which he was noticed not only on the field, but also outside it. Every match he saw a familiar face in the crowd, the same girl with big eyes and tireless energy who always supported his team. One day, Tyler decided to find Caitlin on social media. He wrote her a short message. "Thank you for your support at every match. You are always at the forefront." Caitlin couldn't believe her eyes. Tyler wrote to her himself. They began to correspond, talking about football, about his plans to go to college and her dream of becoming a sports journalist. However, a few days later, when Tyler accidentally asked how old she was, he was stunned. "I'm 14, Caitlin wrote, not even realizing that it would change everything. Tyler replied briefly, "You're very cool, but the age difference is too big. Take care, Kate." After that, his messages were no more. Tyler felt that it would be right, because he had to go to college and didn't want to complicate his life or hers. For the next 2 years, they lived their lives. Tyler entered the university and began playing for the youth football team. He became an even more successful athlete, devoting himself to training and education. His days were filled with matches, travel and dreams of a professional football career. Caitlin also did not stand still. She entered high school and started her own football blog, where she wrote about games, tactics, and the brightest players. Her passion for football only grew, and the blog gradually gained popularity among teenagers. Although they no longer crossed and communicated, both remembered that brief moment when their paths briefly crossed. Caitlin turned 16, and her life changed. She was no longer the shy fan she stood by the field 2 years ago. Her blog became popular among football fans, and Caitlin herself grew up and flourished. In addition to her favorite football, new emotions appeared in her life. She began dating a guy named Luke. Luke was kind, attentive, and always supported Caitlin in everything. Their relationship lasted 2 months, and the girl felt happy. One warm evening, Caitlin's friend Sarah invited her and Luke for a walk. Sarah's boyfriend suggested that everyone go to the city center by car to spend time near a popular cafe. Caitlin agreed, not even suspecting that this evening would change her life. They stopped in the parking lot near the cafe. The sound of music came from the windows of the car, and the evening bustle reigned on the street. When Sarah's boyfriend, Michael, got out of the car, he noticed a familiar silhouette nearby. "Tyler. Come here, brother," Michael shouted, waving his hand. Caitlin shuddered at that name. Her heart beat faster. "It's impossible," she thought. In a few seconds, Tyler, approached the car. During these 2 years, he has changed. He has become even more mature, more self-confident, but still charismatic. He greeted Michael and Luke, not even paying attention to Caitlin, who was sitting in the back seat and watching silently. Tyler didn't recognize her. Later, when everyone got out of the car and headed to the cafe, Caitlin gained courage. She took out her phone, opened their long-standing social media correspondence, and showed it to Tyler. "Do you remember that?" she asked, looking him straight in the eye. Tyler stopped. At first, he couldn't understand anything, but when he saw his name on the old messages, his face changed. "Caitlin?" he asked in surprise, as if not believing his eyes. He suddenly remembered everything: her support at the matches, their conversations, and the moment when he decided to stop writing. In front of him was no longer that young girl, but a self-confident young girl. For the next 2 days, Tyler couldn't stop thinking about a chance meeting. She moved something old and important in him, what he thought was forgotten. On the 3rd day after their meeting, Caitlin received a message. "Hello? I still can't believe it was you. How are you? I'd like to talk. Caitlin has read this short message several times. Fate seemed to bring them together again now that both had something to say to each other. After that random message from Tyler, Caitlin couldn't find a place for herself. Her heart beat faster every time his name appeared on the phone screen. Their correspondence resumed, as if there had been no 2 years of silence. Tyler was attentive, kind and joked like no one else. She felt alive with him. One day, after another evening of conversation, Tyler asked, "Do you have someone now?" "Love?" Caitlin froze. She felt her cheeks lit up and pinched in her chest. The face of Luke, her boyfriend, with whom everything was fine, appeared before her eyes. But these feelings could not compare with what she felt for Tyler. "No, no," she replied, almost whispering, and immediately felt a bitter taste of lies. Tyler seemed to take a sigh of relief and wrote, "Then, shall we go somewhere? Date, like in the movies, you and me?" Caitlin couldn't refuse. "Good," she replied briefly, smiling at the thought that her dream was coming true. Tyler came to get her on Saturday night. They went to a cozy cafe, then walked around the park, talked about life, about football, about everything that happened to them during these 2 years. Caitlin felt the heart bursting out of her chest, and all doubts were erased. However, happiness was overshadowed by one thought: Luke. He was kind, sincere and loved her, but she could no longer deceive him or herself. She knew that sooner or later she had to tell him the truth. The next day she made up her saw. They met in the park, and Caitlin, gathering all her courage, said, "Luck, you're an incredible guy. But I can't lie to you or myself anymore. My heart belongs to another." Luke was silent, and his eyes filled with pain. He didn't get angry, but the disappointment in his eyes was harder than any words. "I just want you to be happy," he said quietly and left. Caitlin was in pain, but she was relieved. For the first time in a long time, she told the truth. The next evening, she met Tyler. He looked at her with a warm and grateful look, and Caitlin realized that her choice was the right one. Now they could be together without hiding or hesitating. Their relationship began as she dreamed 2 years ago, sincerely, without hesitation and with true love in her heart. Tyler and Caitlin became not just a couple, but a team that supported each other in everything, as before, only now, on a new level. Caitlin and Tyler began dating, and her life became full of new emotions. Tyler became for her what she was always looking for: a friend, a partner, and an inspiration. He often took her to football matches, where Caitlin had watched the game enthusiastically before, but now her heart was filled with pride when she saw Tyler on the field. Meanwhile, Tyler continued to work hard on his football career. He trained almost every day, striving to get an invitation to a professional club. Caitlin supported him in everything. She wrote articles for her blog in which she talked about football matches, including Tyler's game. Her words inspired him, and her faith gave him strength in the most difficult moments. One day, after an important match, Tyler approached Caitlin, tired but happy. "I've received a call from the youth team of the Seattle Sounders. I passed. They want me to train with them." Caitlin threw herself around his neck with joy. It was a huge step towards his dream, and she was sincerely happy for him. But joy quickly changed to anxiety. The trip to Seattle meant that their relationship would move into a distance format. "What about us?" she asked softly. Tyler smiled and took her hands. "We will manage. I will never leave you, Kate. You have always been my support, and I want you to be there, even if we are far away from each other." Those words calmed Caitlin down, but a test awaited them ahead. Tyler moved to Seattle, and now the relationship was held by long video calls, messages, and rare encounters as he returned home for the weekend. The first few months were difficult. Tyler plunged headlong into training and adapting to a new level of play, while Caitlin tried to focus on learning and developing her blog. She began working with local sports publications, who noticed her talent for writing articles. One evening, Tyler called her after another match and said, "I know you dream of becoming a sports journalist. Come to Seattle for the summer vacation. There are several opportunities for you. You can write about our matches, meet with coaches, see a different level of football. You've always wanted this." Caitlin was surprised, but her eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Tyler was always able to support her dreams as she supported him. They both grew as individuals, but at the same time they did not move away, but only became closer. When summer came, Caitlin came to Seattle. She wrote articles about youth matches, talked to players and coaches, and this was the beginning of her professional career. Tyler saw her shine with happiness, doing what she loved. One evening, they were sitting on the coast of Puget Sound Bay, watching the sunset. Tyler took her hand and whispered, "Do you believe that we met for a reason? Fate pushed us together once, then a second time. Now I know I'll never let you go." Caitlin smiled and leaned against him. She knew that there were many challenges ahead of them, but now they were a team as strong and invincible as the footballers on the field, whom she once supported so enthusiastically. It was a story about two people who, thanks to love and support, not only found each other, but also helped fulfill the dreams of each of them. The summer in Seattle was special to Caitlin and Tyler. They supported each other in everything. Tyler worked on his technique and dreamed of getting into the main team, and Caitlin wrote articles for a sports magazine, thanks to which her talent was noticed even by experienced journalists. She went to all the matches, communicated with coaches and players, analyzed the tactics and moments of the game, which became the basis for her analytical articles. One evening, as they were strolling along the waterfront after another match won, Tyler shared the news. "Kate, can you imagine? I was offered to sign a contract for the season with the main team. It means more matches, more travel, but..." He paused for a moment, looking at her, as if he was afraid of her reaction. "But it also means even more time away from home and away from you." Caitlin smiled, although it was sad inside for a moment. "Tyler, this is your dream. And you have to follow her, even if it's not easy for us. We can handle it, right?" Tyler hugged her and whispered, "I can do anything with you." The next few months were crucial for both. Tyler joined the main team, showing himself as a promising player. Caitlin, returning home, continued to school and wrote articles about his matches, even if she only watched them on TV. She felt closer to him, even when they were hundreds of miles away from each other. One day, Caitlin received a letter from one of the famous sports publications in New York. They offered her an internship after graduating from school, noticing her work on local football and articles about youth matches. She couldn't believe her eyes. She immediately called Tyler, barely holding in her joy. "You won't believe it. I was invited to an internship in New York. This is a chance, Tyler. My chance." Tyler, although he was exhausted after training, was no less happy. "I knew you could do it. You are the best. I'm so proud of you, Kate." But along with joy came a new reality. New York was even further from Seattle. They both understood that there were even more difficult tests ahead for their relationship. A few months later, Caitlin moved to New York. The big city twisted it in its rhythm, new acquaintances, hard work in the publication and the first reports from the stadiums of great teams. She wrote about sporting events at the national level and even got the opportunity to interview a famous player, which she could only dream of before. Tyler also achieved success. His team advanced to the playoffs, and he became one of the key players of the season. Their phone conversations became shorter because of busy schedules, but every word, every video call was like a breath of fresh air for them. One evening, after a hard day's work, Caitlin received a video message from Tyler. She opened it and saw him sitting in the stand of an empty stadium in Seattle. "I know sometimes it's not easy for us. But I want you to know, I believe in us. You are my team, Caitlin, regardless of distance and obstacles. We both dreamed once, and we do it. Together." Tears came to Caitlin's eyes. She wanted to say so much, but she only whispered in response, "We've always been a team, Tyler. We will always be." Their story is not over yet. There were great challenges ahead, but they both knew that love and faith in each other was what would help them go anyway. That day became special for Caitlin and Tyler. His appearance on the threshold of her apartment in New York was a real surprise, as a gift she had been waiting for a long time. "I couldn't wait any longer. You're far away, but my heart is always next to you," he said, hugging her as if they had never seen each other for eternity. They spent this weekend together, enjoying every minute. Tyler managed to get acquainted with Caitlin's life in the big city. They walked in Central Park, rode a boat near the Statue of Liberty, and had dinner in a small Italian restaurant, which Caitlin called her favorite. "I always knew you were made for big things," Tyler said, looking at her under the soft light of the street lamp. "I've always known that your dreams take you to the top." "I'm proud of you more than you think," she replied with a smile. When the weekend came to an end, Caitlin felt a familiar stinging feeling of parting. Tyler had to return to Seattle again. "How much more will this go on? We're both working on our dreams, but when can we finally just be together?" she asked. Tyler was silent for a moment, then replied, "Give me some more time. I will fight for the National League contract. If everything goes as planned, I can move closer to you. Just believe in us." And Caitlin believed. She knew that their dreams were worth the effort. The following months flew in intense work. Tyler played at the best level of his entire career, and Caitlin was promoted in the editorial office. Her articles began to be published on the main pages, and one day the editor instructed her to write about a promising young football player, Tyler Stanton. "Is this a joke?" she asked when she saw the task. No. This guy is on the ears. We need deep analytics." "You're good at football," the editor replied. Caitlin smiled and answered briefly, "I will definitely find a common language with him." She came to Seattle for a Tyler team match. After the game, they sat in the podium when the sun was already setting behind the horizon. "Funny, isn't it? I was once just a girl in the stands who wanted to see you closer. And now I'm writing about you for New York's main sports magazine." Tyler hugged her and whispered, "And one day this girl will become the best sports journalist in the country. I have no doubt about it." He stopped for a moment, looked into her eyes and added, "One day we will build our lives together. Just wait a little longer." That evening, Caitlin realized that all the trials they had gone through had only strengthened their feelings. She knew that there was a difficult path ahead for them, but faith and love always kept them together. The next morning, Caitlin returned to New York with notes for the article and a heart full of memories of the time she spent with Tyler. She wrote the material that became a real hit, an emotional story about a young football player, his path to success and his selfless love for the game. The editorial staff praised her style, and her article hit the front page. Meanwhile, Tyler's career soared even higher. One of the main clubs of the league paid attention to him and offered a contract. Tyler had to move to New York to join the local team. The evening he arrived was unforgettable for both of them. Caitlin met him at the station, and he got off the train and immediately rushed to her. "I promised we would be together. Now it's more than just words," he said, pressing her to himself. Tyler settled in an apartment nearby, and their lives gradually became common: morning walks before work, dinners in small cafes, and evenings when they discussed football and journalism, their greatest passions. One day, after an important match where Tyler scored the winning goal, he walked to the stand where Caitlin was sitting. He pointed his finger at her and raised his hands to the sky, a sign that he was dedicating this moment to her. The audience applauded, and Caitlin, with tears of happiness in her eyes, realized it was their common triumph. That same evening, Tyler cooked dinner in his apartment and invited her. During the dessert, he got up from the chair and took out a small velvet box. "Caitlin, you were always there when I fell and when I got up. You are my team, my best friend and the love of my life. Will you marry me?" Caitlin covered her mouth with her hand. Tears came to her eyes, but she immediately whispered, "Yes. Yes, Tyler." He put a ring on her, and then picked her up in his arms, laughing with happiness. Their dreams have come true. He became a professional footballer, she is a successful sports journalist. They went through trials, distance and doubts, but always held on to what was most valuable to them: love and faith in each other. After the engagement, their lives turned even faster. Tyler became a key player on his new team, with his name increasingly appearing in sports news headlines. Caitlin also did not lag behind. Her articles about football were now read all over the country, and she became one of the youngest but most talented sports journalists in New York. Preparations for the wedding began almost immediately. They decided to hold the ceremony in Seattle, the city where it all began. The day was clear, and the air was full of warmth and excitement. Caitlin stood in front of the mirror in a snow-white dress. Her friend Emma helped correct the veil. "Are you ready?" Emma asked, smiling. "More than ever," Caitlin replied, feeling her heart beat faster and faster. Tyler was waiting for her at the arch, decorated with white roses. When he saw her, his eyes lit up like when he first noticed her on the podium many years ago. "You're my biggest victory, Caitlin," he whispered as she walked towards him. "And you are my team for life," she replied with a smile. The ceremony was simple and touching. Their friends and relatives couldn't hold back their tears as they uttered their promises. After the wedding, there was a small party in the open air. Tyler raised a toast. "For dreams that come true, and for the love that supports everything. Caitlin, you and I have gone through distance, doubts and fears, but we are here. And I promise I'll always hold your hand, no matter what happens." Caitlin smiled and replied, "And I promise to always believe in you and be your biggest fan." The evening ended under the starry sky when they danced to their favorite song, forgetting about everything in the world. A year later, Caitlin published her first book about the football world and the challenges faced by young athletes. She dedicated it to Tyler, who not only inspired her to write, but was also there for her during every line. Tyler, in turn, became the captain of the team and led it to victory in the championship. One evening they were sitting together in their house, which they bought on the outskirts of New York. Tyler was flipping through Caitlin's book, and she looked at him with love. "Do you think we'll ever tell our kids how it all started?" she asked jokingly. Tyler smiled and replied, "Necessarily. And maybe our story will inspire them to believe in dreams as we believed in our own." Caitlin leaned against him and whispered, "The main thing is that we've always been together. Step by step." They sat for so long, knowing that their story is not the end, but only the beginning of a new, joint life, full of love, faith, and endless possibilities. Years passed, and Caitlin and Tyler's lives were gaining momentum. They supported each other in everything. Caitlin has become one of the country's leading sports journalists, and her books about football have won awards and inspired many young people. Tyler, in turn, was at the peak of his career, the captain of the team, a fan favorite and an example for young athletes. One winter day, when New York was covered in white snow, Tyler returned home earlier from training. Caitlin was working on a new book, sitting at the desk when she heard his footsteps. "Are you so early?" she was surprised, returning to him. "There is news that can't wait," Tyler replied, shining with happiness. He approached her, sat down next to her and took out a leaf. "Caitlin, I was invited to be part of the coaching staff of the national team. It's my new challenge, but I want us to make that decision together." Caitlin looked at him and smiled. "Tyler, I've always believed you're not just a player. You are a mentor, a leader. This is your calling, and I am proud of you." He hugged her and whispered, "I wouldn't have achieved that without you." That evening they celebrated an important step in his career, but both understood that a new stage of life was waiting for them. A few months later, Tyler officially became the assistant head coach of the national team, and Caitlin began working on a large-scale documentary project about the team's preparation for the World Cup. Work allowed them to be together, even when the schedules were tense. During this period, their lives changed even more. One morning, Caitlin, holding a pregnancy test in her hands, approached Tyler. He was just going to training. "Tyler, we're going to have a baby," she said, barely holding her emotions. Tyler froze, and then walked carefully to her and snuggled up to her belly. "Are you serious? This is the best news in the world? I've always dreamed about it." Caitlin smiled through tears and whispered, "Now we're really a team." A few years later, their daughter, whom they named Lily, became their greatest happiness. Tyler taught her to play football in the backyard, and Caitlin read her stories about sports, love, and perseverance. Once during a big match, Tyler, already as the head coach of the national team, brought the team to the field, and Caitlin and little Lily sat in the stands. The girl shouted, "Mom, Dad is the best coach in the world." Caitlin smiled and replied, "He's also the best dad and husband." She looked at the field where Tyler was leading the team, and realized that all their dreams had come true. They went from simple youthful feelings to true, adult love that has stood the test of time, distance, and life's challenges. Their history lasted, but now they had their own small team, and there were many more adventures ahead. A few years passed, and the lives of Caitlin, Tyler, and their little Lily turned into a real embodiment of their dreams. Taylor became the head coach of the national team, and his career was gaining momentum. Caitlin remained in New York, where she continued her work as a journalist and writer, but now everything was more balanced than ever. They traveled together, spent time at home, raising their small family. Subsequently, they decided that Lily was ready to take another important step. In her small room, Lily was about to start her own dream. She said she wanted to become a football player. She was already in sports school, but now she started talking seriously. "Mom, Dad, I want to play for your team," she said, with a joyful determination in her voice. Caitlin and Tyler looked at each other. Tyler smiled. "When you were little, I always tried to teach you to football. But now you decide your fate. If it's your dream, Mom and I will support you." Caitlin added, "It's important that you follow your heart, even if it means going your own way. If you like it, we will support you, just like your dreams." Tyler took Lily in his arms and looked at her proudly. "Let you choose your own path, but always remember that it is important to work, even when it is difficult. And never be afraid to be yourself." For the next few years, Lily trained with all her might, and although she was still small, her determination impressed even the most experienced coaches. Caitlin continued to write, and Tyler was already spending more time with his family, watching and supporting Lily. A few years later, Lily really got into the young national team, and her dream began to come true. One day, after an important match in which Lily scored her first goal for the national team, she ran to Tyler and Caitlin. "I did it," she exclaimed, barely holding off her emotions. Tyler hugged her and said, "I'm so proud of you, baby. You became part of a big team. But most importantly, you're going after your dream." Caitlin, looking at them, thought, "We started with a small dream, and now our daughter is building her own story." They all looked together at the field where the team was celebrating the victory, and Caitlin realized that their love and support became the basis for all these victories. Soon Tyler began to plan a new phase of his career. After completing his work with the national team, he decided to become a coach at an international club to pass on his experience to a new generation of footballers. She and Caitlin discussed the decision, knowing that there would be more changes ahead. But their family life, support and love for each other remained unbreakable, despite new challenges. "We've really created something special, haven't we?" Caitlin said, looking at Tyler in their favorite cafe. "Yes, we've created a team," Tyler replied, taking her hand. "A team that has gone through everything and is now building new dreams for our children." They knew that there were many important steps ahead, but together they were ready for all possible tests,